Okay, we're about to dive into a genuinely weird and fascinating idea from neuroscience that might just change how you think about, well, every single choice you make. Just think about this for a second. What if, for every choice you make, the real decision has already happened deep inside your head? And I'm not talking about basic instincts here or, knee-jerk habits. We are talking about conscious, deliberate decisions, the ones you really feel like you are making. The science actually suggests the groundwork is laid before you even get a say. It sounds impossible, right? Well, you'd be surprised.
So, this brings us to the core mystery. We think of a choice as something we start, a moment where we're in total control. But what if that feeling of control is an illusion? Or at least not what we think it is?
This is the really unsettling discovery from a famous experiment. Researchers could literally see a person's brain gearing up to make a decision, firing up for action, well before the person had any conscious idea that they were about to do anything at all. And that's the question that just flips everything on its head. Is your conscious mind actually driving the car, or is it the passenger, just looking out the window and describing a journey that's already happening?
To really get this, we have to look at the experiment that discovered this bizarre head start the brain gives itself. It's pretty wild. The setup was beautifully simple. They hooked people up to an EEG to watch their brainwaves and told them just one thing: press a button whenever the urge strikes. No signals, no cues from the researchers, just a completely free, spontaneous choice. Now, the really cool part is the specific signal they were looking for. It's called the readiness potential, which is basically the brain's get ready signal. It's this buildup of neural activity that always shows up right before we make a voluntary move. And here it is, the bombshell finding. That readiness potential, the brain's intention to act, showed up about half a second before the person actually reported feeling the conscious will to press the button. Think about that. The brain was already committed to the action before the you part of you even knew about it. This is the absolute perfect way to think about it. It's like the unconscious parts of your brain draft the email, attach the files, and smash that send button. Your conscious mind is just that little notification that pops up a moment later saying, by the way, message sent. So if our mind isn't the one hitting send, then what is its job? This whole discovery has led to a completely new way of thinking about what consciousness is even for. The thinking now is that your consciousness isn't the author of the action. It's more like the narrator. It sees what the brain has already put in motion, and then it weaves this coherent story around it, which makes you feel like you were the one who wrote the first line. So check out this shift in thinking. We love to think of our conscious self as the CEO, barking orders from the top floor. But this new evidence suggests it's much more like a really sharp editor. It doesn't write the first draft. The brain does that, but it has the final say. It can review it, approve it, or just hit delete. And that delete button, that's the whole key. This new model doesn't mean we're just puppets. Instead, it shows us where our real power, our true agency, actually is. And this is so important. This isn't about having no free will. It's about understanding the mechanics of our will. Our control isn't in coming up with every single impulse out of thin air, because that seems to happen automatically. Here's the new sequence. First, your brain serves up an idea, an urge, an impulse. Then, your conscious mind becomes aware of it. And in that tiny little gap, that moment between the impulse and the action, that is where you live. You have the power of veto, the power to say yes or, just as importantly, no. So this all comes down to one simple but seriously profound technique: the pause. It's the difference between reacting on autopilot and actually responding with intention. By creating just a tiny bit of space between a feeling and an action, you're giving your conscious editor time to do its job, to decide if that first draft from the brain is really worth publishing. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Start asking yourself this question as you go about your day. When you reach for your phone, or pick what to eat, or decide to speak up in a meeting, ask yourself this. Because once you start noticing that your brain is always one step ahead, you stop identifying with every single impulse. You realize your real power isn't in coming up with the ideas, but in choosing which ones get to become your reality. And that right there changes everything.